Should you fish a reel with a quick fire trigger? Let's get into it as we take a look at the Shimano Syncopate. Hey guys, I'm Kevin with Kemp Outside, your inside source for all things outside. We're out here at Medard Reservoir doing a bunch of fishing tackle reviews, and it occurred to me that I've never done a review on the Shimano Syncopate, which is a Shimano reel that's been in their lineup forever, and it has a quick fire trigger. Now you might not know what that is if you're new to fishing, but I really want to get into it today. Should you fish with a reel that has a quick fire trigger? Well, what is a quick fire trigger? Well, let's start with that. A quick fire trigger is set up so that in one move, you can grab the line and open the bail, right? The trigger opens the bail. And that is pretty cool because in most reels, you pinch the line with your hand and you use your other hand to open the bail to do your cast, right? Now, is it really a big deal to be able to open the bail with one hand? Well, no. The answer is no. It is not a big deal. I have never encountered a time when I needed the quick fire feature. Is it handy sometimes? Sure, but the problem is that I fish with this reel so rarely that I often forget, pinch the line with my hand, use my other hand to open the bail, and then fish. Now the other thing is that I have to use my other hand to close the bail after I'm done casting, because you never want to use the reel handle to close the bail. You always want to close it with your hand. But you're already using your second hand anyway, just seconds later. So does it really matter? I don't know. It's up to you. One of the things, though, that is really, really important about the quick fire trigger is that it always has to be top dead center in order for it to work. So when you're reeling in your line and you want to go to cast, if your reel is sitting like that where the trigger's down, it won't work. And so you have to move the line back to where it's top dead center in order for you to open the bail again. Now, why is that a big deal? Well, most reels have what they call instant anti-reverse, which is no matter where the bail is spinning around the spool, is that it won't let line back. Now on this reel, if it's almost all the way to the top, this bail will turn all the way around backwards, letting line out until it gets back to top dead center. If you're fighting a fish and you let go of the handle for a second, one of the things that can happen to you is that can go back to top dead center, giving you slack in the line, potentially losing the fish. So if you're gonna fish with a trigger reel, a quick fire trigger reel, you always need to maintain positive control of your line with the handle, because I can easily go back, as you can see, right? I can easily go back, and when I do that, I can create a bird nest on the reel where the line is not taut, and then it causes a problem when the line comes back off the spool for the next cast, or maybe gets tangled up there. Or, as I said before, if you're fighting a fish and you give a little release of the tension, they could throw the hook in that moment. So does the quick fire trigger and one-handed casting negate the cons of positive reel control and instant anti-reverse loss and all that stuff? Well, that's only a question you can answer. When I started fishing, I gotta say, I loved the quick fire reels. But as I got into fishing, I kind of felt like the deficiencies were not enough to overcome the convenience of a one-handed cast. You might decide that you really like the feature, and if so, Shimano has a reel for you. In terms of the Syncopate, it is not an expensive reel, guys. This is one of their more budget type reels. I have to say that this reel I've had well over 10 years, I think around 12 years. And Shimano sells the same one today. So you can go ahead and get this same one that I'm fishing with right now. In terms of how it fishes, guys, the line comes off the reel no problem. It does an even line lay. It is pretty smooth. I've had this reel for a long time, fished it in saltwater a long time, and it's still a pretty smooth reel for a budget reel. So in terms of that, I like the reel a lot. I will say that we just broke one a couple days ago on a big fish. It snapped at the stem. But again, that was another reel that I'd had for 12 years, caught lots of fish on it. It didn't really owe me anything. So, you know, it is plastic or whatever that material is. I don't really know. It's not metal. So guys, keep that in mind. If you're fighting big fish, you're gonna want a bigger reel. Let's get it back to the house and talk about specs. Okay guys, we're back at the house. It's time to finish up the video on the Shimano Syncopate reel with the quick fire trigger, right? And so Shimano actually calls this the quick fire 2. My guess is that there was a quick fire 1 originally, and then they've updated the quick fire trigger, so that's called the quick fire 2. Also wanted to let you guys know, this is the 2500 size. So Shimano sells this in a 1000, a 2500, and a 4000. So 3 different sizes. And I do like the 2500 for both inshore saltwater fishing and bass fishing. So let's talk about using this reel in saltwater, guys. So this is not a saltwater reel. It is not rated for saltwater. It's not designed for saltwater, but a lot of reels can be used in saltwater nonetheless. And I am a big advocate of using what you got, right? If you don't have the budget to go outfit yourself with freshwater only rigs and saltwater only rigs, use the same rig for both. But it's going to require a lot of maintenance, and understand that this reel will not last as long if you use it in saltwater than if you just use it in freshwater. That said, if you oil the reel on a regular basis, you rinse it off after every use, you make sure that it's properly greased. If you accidentally submerge the reel in salt water, that you go ahead and do some special maintenance on it, pull it apart, clean it off, make sure that the salt is out, re-oil and grease, all that stuff. If you do that, this reel will last a long time, as is evidenced by the fact that this reel is over 12 years old. I fish it in salt water pretty often, and at least it's on my boat a lot and gets exposed to salt air a lot, and it is still working. So I don't fish with this reel very much. This is one of my boat rods. So this is one of the rods that I often hand guests when they're on my boat, especially. So guys, I'll just give you a little tip. If you take people fishing, and you take a lot of people fishing who are relatively new to fishing, you probably don't want to put your high dollar combos in their hands. Now, if you have more money than me and you can afford it, if somebody drops or breaks an expensive rod, hey, that's, great, good for you. But for me, especially if I have kids or that kind of thing, I'm going to take some lower dollar setups in my boat. That way, if they let go of the rod on a big fish, they drop the rod in the water, they dunk the reel in the salt water, they high stick the rod and break it, whatever happens, right? I don't feel too bad because I'm not out a significant amount of money, right? So I have what I call boat rods, and I have some inexpensive boat rod setups, and then I have some more expensive boat rod setups for guests who are more experienced fishermen, right? So I have a gamut of rods and reels on my boat. So that's one of the reasons why I do these reviews on the less expensive gear and the more expensive gear, is because there are use cases for all types of gear, right? And so I really like these inexpensive Shimano reels because they are great for inexperienced anglers and guests and that kind of thing. They don't break the bank, and if something happens to them, you don't feel horrible about it, right? So Shimano retails this reel, or the suggested retail price of this reel is $35. And I think that is the right price. And if you guys can get like a 10% off at Bass Pro or something like that, something that dropped the price down to $30 or less, that's even better in my mind. This reel is spooled with 10-pound Power Pro, and I've had this line on this reel for a long time. One of the things I like about braided line is you don't have to change it out nearly as often as your monofilament. So even though it costs a little more, it lasts a whole lot longer. So I definitely recommend spooling your rods with braided line. The rod itself, guys, is a Shimano Carbomax in medium, and I don't make the Carbomax anymore. So this was kind of more of a budget rod in Shimano's lineup back when they did sell it. So again, I oftentimes will pair rods and reels of similar prices. So if it's a $30 to $35 reel, I'm putting it on a $30 to $50 rod, right? And you know, that kind of thing. Not always though, guys. There are some times when there are rods or reels that I really, really like. And so even though it doesn't kind of match the price of the other, I'll mix them because I think it makes a great combo. So let's talk about the 2500 for a minute, right? Because again, there's 1,000 and a 4,000, but I really like the 2500 for inshore saltwater and in freshwater fishing. According to the specs on Shimano's website, the gear ratio is a 5.2 to 1. It's a little less than I like. I typically like a 6.2 to 1 gear ratio, but I have a lot of 5.2 to 1 reels and they do just fine. It has a max drag of 7 pounds, right? So that is not a lot of drag compared to a lot of the other reels I fish with. However, I am not, for the most part, a fan of just cranking the drag down as tight as possible, right? You want to be able to use the drag that the reel has to fight the fish and to get it in without risking breaking your line or risk even breaking your rod or that kind of thing. So you really want to be able to have a drag that's functional. A good functional smooth drag is much more important than the drag capacity rating. And this reel, for a $35 reel, I think has a pretty decent drag. So that's good. I would like it to have a little bit higher drag capacity. On the 4000, they have a 13-pound drag, and that's pretty good, right? I mean, a lot of them you see today are like 15 pounds. So 13-pound drag is pretty good. I wish this reel was of about 10-pound drag. The weight of the 2500 is 9.2 ounces. So there are definitely reels that are lighter than this one out there. But this is not what I would consider a super heavy reel. I do really like, if I'm making a lot of casts, if I'm fishing artificials, where I'm making a lot of casts in a day, 500, 700 casts in a day, I like a reel that's around 7 ounces, right? You're gonna spend more money, but your wrist, arm, elbow, shoulder, back, everything is going to thank you because that motion repetitive over time, ounces matter. If you're making less casts in a day, or you're just fishing occasionally, or you're doing the kind of bait presentations where, you know, maybe you're watching a bobber or a float or something like that, or you're fishing live bait, or you're just not making a lot of casts, then ounces of the reel doesn't matter as much. So let's talk about line capacity. With 10 pounds of braid, you get 170 yards on this spool. 15-pound braid is 145 yards and 95 yards of 30-pound braid. That is Power Pro line capacity. So your braid, depending on what braid you use, the diameter of braid is a little bit different per brand. So your mileage may vary a little bit. I always put backer on my reels. So there's a little backer of monofilament under the braid, and then I tie a uni to uni to connect the braid to the monofilament backing. The reason I do that is this is not a braid ready spool. So if you tie braid directly to the spool, it's going to spin on the spool because the braid just slips. It doesn't bite on the spool like monofilament does. And then you're not going to get a tight line lay, which will cause you all kinds of knots and problems. So you want to make sure that on all spools that aren't braid ready, that you put monofilament backing. I also recommend that you put monofilament backing anyway. Most of the time, you're not going to need more than 100 to 150 yards of braid, and a lot of time, much less than that. So it doesn't make sense to spool up. There are reels out there that will take 300 yards of braid. You don't need that much braid. You're wasting money. Braid is expensive compared to monofilament, so always back your reels with monofilament and then put a top shot of braid on there that's about 150 yards worth of braid for this size reel and the kind of fishing that we're doing here. But again, inshore saltwater and freshwater. Just to give you an idea of other weights and capacities, so the 1000 reel is a 7.6 ounce reel, and it holds 95 yards of 10-pound braid, 85 yards of 15-pound braid, and 65 yards of 20-pound braid. The 4,000 size reel is a 12.7 ounce reel, and it holds 265 yards of 15-pound braid, and that's where I would really do backing. It holds 175 yards of 30-pound braid or 145 pounds of 50-pound braid. So there are a few things that Shimano does with their reels that are pretty good. One of them is their spool ring shape. So they've basically created this spool so that line flows very well off the spool. And it's basically the way it's beveled and shaped, and it does work pretty well. I get pretty decent casting distance for this reel. But you know, that is really common now, even on the budget reels from all the major brands, whether it's Shimano or Daiwa or Penn or Abu Garcia, Pfluger, you know, it doesn't matter who's out there. Almost everybody has a pretty well-shaped spool these days, even on their most inexpensive reels. So again, as I mentioned, guys, this is not an all-metal reel, and so when my son foul hooked a ray or a shark or something like that, it was really big. When he was putting the line on the reel, there was a lot of movement on the reel as he was torquing it, and he actually snapped the reel at the stem. Again, these reels are pretty old. You know, Shimano sells this reel again, you know, still today, but you know, my reels, this one is at least 12 years old. So, and it's probably even older than that. It might be even 15, 16 years old. So, you know, this graphite material that they make the reel out of is pretty strong, but it's not as strong as a full metal reel. So if you're going after big fish, right? If you're going after muskie in freshwater or even large pike, or you're going after cobia or maybe, you know, mackerel, you know, bigger saltwater fish, bull reds, you know, big snook, I would not choose a graphite reel for that purpose. In most cases, if I'm going for really big fish, right, I would probably choose an all-metal reel for that application, and Penn has some great ones, and so I probably would recommend some Penn reels for that application. There are also some higher-end Shimanos that will do just fine, but in these less expensive, these budget reels, really of any brand, I would not try to go hunting for big fish with cheap reels. I think you're just going to get your heart broken when you hook into something really big and the reel just isn't able to handle it. But for a lot of things, guys, for largemouth bass and smallmouth bass and walleye, for pike, for your saltwater species like flounder, snook, slot reds, sea trout, you know, white bass, whatever you're fishing for, right? This reel at this size is really, really functional for a lot of different fish. The question is, guys, is do you like the quick fire trigger? And that is a choice only you can make. As I said earlier in the video, I used to love quick fire triggers. I thought they were so cool. I thought it was so cool to cast one-handed. But as I fished more with a lot of different setups, I realized that I just didn't like the lack of line control. I want a reel with instant anti-reverse. And because of the quick fire design, this reel doesn't have that. It has anti-reverse, but only once the reel gets back to top dead center. And that much movement can cost you a big fish, because if you put slack in the line, that'll give fish an opportunity to throw the hook, and they will. I don't know that I've ever lost a fish on this reel, but the potential is there, and it's a high enough potential that really this quick fire isn't for me anymore. So, you know, it's kind of funny because, you know, once you have a reel and you've had it for a long time and it's, you know, a decent reel and it still performs well, I'm not going to replace it. I'm going to keep it in my lineup. I'm going to keep this rod and reel on the boat. But when this reel finally wears out, when it finally, you know, either the exposure to salt water becomes too much for it, or, you know, it breaks on a big fish, or, you know, like the last one we had, or whatever, I will probably retire this reel and I will not purchase any more quick fire trigger reels. It's just not a feature that's really for me. But again, everyone is different. And if you love it and the cons don't outweigh the pros for you, by all means pick one up. I'm going to put affiliate links below where you can pick up these reels. They are affiliate links, so if you use my link to purchase, it doesn't cost you anything extra, but it's a great way to support my channel as I get a little commission on the sale. I do think it is a great reel for what it is. It's a great price. It performs pretty well. It's pretty smooth. It holds up to saltwater really well for what it is. I'm surprised at how well it holds up if you maintain it, right? But it does have a feature that you're either going to love or you're going to hate. So it's really up to you. Guys, I'm Kevin with Camp Outside, your inside source for all things outside. We exist to help moms and dads take their kids camping, hiking, fishing, learn about nature, and develop a conservation ethic. We want to help you get you and your kids outside. One of the best things you can do is to take a kid fishing. I love taking my kids fishing. I love it when they catch fish. To catch fish, guys, you got to kind of know what you're doing, and you got to have the right gear, right? So that's one of the reasons why we do all these gear reviews, is we don't want you to buy stuff that doesn't work for you. So if you have any questions about the Shimano Syncopate or fishing with a quick fire trigger or how to set yourself up for whatever fish you're targeting, drop something in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. Or you can connect with me on my other social media. I'm on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and X. Or you can connect with us at our website at campoutside.com. Guys, I have a lot of stuff coming in 2025. We're doing a lot of fishing gear reviews. We're going to be doing some more fishing videos. We've got a big trip planned where we're going to spend, I think it's 9 days on Clarks Hill Lake in Georgia, which is a huge reservoir. It's a J. Strom Thurmond Reservoir, if you know it by that name. Hopefully we're going to get into striped bass and some other fish. We're gonna do a lot of fishing when we're there. We're camping there for 9 days. Really, really excited about that. And then also we're gonna be doing a lot of saltwater fishing here in 2025. So we're gonna get out on pontoon fish and see what we can do. But we're also gonna have plenty of gear reviews, how-tos, tips and tricks, hiking videos, camping videos, all that stuff too. So if you like outdoor content, hit that subscribe, ring that little bell icon that notifies you when we release new videos, and give me a thumbs up on this video. It super helps the algorithm. And again, comments are welcome, guys. Let me know what you think. Guys, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.